Hey everybody, Bobby Murray here, and today I want to talk about something really important because, tomorrow is the big election, and having been involved in social media with Facebook and Twitter and even LinkedIn, I've watched a lot of conversations, a lot of really interesting conversations. And what I thought would be really interesting is to talk about hypocrisy because it comes up a lot. And now the hypocrisy is often based in the idea of how people argue. So there's a great article, if you ever looked this up, different logical fallacies. And so the two most there's several common logical fallacies people use when they come to discuss or debate issues, particularly with politics. Now, again, if you're interested in this, again, comment below, like this, share this. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear if you have any questions, discuss. That'd be great. Below, just comment below. But what kind of hypocrisy have you seen? What kind of illogic people use? I mean, the biggest illogic that people use is anecdotal logic. So they'll say, well, because of this situation or this example or this story, that means it applies to everything. That's usually a very, very common one. Oftentimes people will start, using ad hominem attacks, calling me a liar or a loser or whatever it is. That's a very Trump-like thing, call someone a loser, but it doesn't really attempt to deal with the actual discussion. Or they defer, they deflect. Someone attacks them and they don't do it. But I want to talk about a few of the ones that I've seen. So, here's one example of hypocrisy when it comes to discussing politics. So one would be where you call. This is a very Trump-like thing. Calling anyone a liar when you refuse to listen to or acknowledge evidence. So someone provides you with evidence, whether you're talking about politics, you're talking about health, you're talking about education or parenting, and then you just say, well, you're lying. Well, and even though the evidence is there, you just ignore it. So to me, that would be an absolute example of hypocrisy. A really, really great example of hypocrisy, again, is a man cheats on his wife, yet gets mad at women for being cheated on, right? So that's hypocrisy, right? Because here's a man who's cheating on his wife, and yet he calls out some other woman for being cheated on. I mean, it's bad enough they call another person for actually another man or woman for cheating on their spouse, but instead they actually call out someone for being cheated on. Again, that's hypocrisy to the next level. Another hypocrisy I've seen a lot, and this is a really big one, which is, you'll acknowledge the flaws in the leader you oppose, but then you won't acknowledge flaws in the leader you support. This is something that's really important, particularly in politics. The truth is, no politician is perfect. So I think that whether you talk about politics in Canada, so you want to talk about Harper, Trudeau, and Mulcair, or Catherine Wynne, or things like that, you have to be able to acknowledge what they're good at, but also what they're bad at. And if you only just acknowledge the flaws in the opposite person, the opposition, that's not really good enough. I've seen this a lot too, again, with a lot of Trump supporters, where they will call out Hillary for a lot of flaws, and some of them are legit, and some of them are not legit. But when asked about Trump's flaws, they refuse to acknowledge them. So to me, that is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is not being able to see the flaws in your own leader. And the truth is, if you can't do that, or if you can't see that, then essentially you're blind sheep. So it's important to be able to do that. I know right now when I look at right now my Mayor Tory and my Premier Wynne and my Prime Minister Trudeau, and even though President Obama in the U.S., I'm able to, and other people are able to see the flaws they have or the things they're struggling with, and it's important to be able to acknowledge that. If you can't, then to me, that is absolute hypocrisy. One of the things I've noticed in this whole political process is that not all, most Hillary supporters that love her, they also say, here's why she sucks, and here's why we're angry with her, here's why we're mad at her, and they say that. Whereas most Trump supporters, from what I've seen, they don't actually talk about all of his bad stuff. Or they'll say, well, that's the way he is, and they just kind of dismiss it. So to me, that's hypocrisy. Another example of hypocrisy is holding others accountable for things you don't hold yourself accountable to. So if you, and again, I've seen this in politics where someone will say, this is the way we need to act, but then they don't do the exact same thing. A while back, someone actually posted this thing about being loving and honorable and polite and whatever. Then the discord they had with someone else was not that. So again, that's hypocrisy. Another great example of hypocrisy in data, this probably goes back to the FBI thing. So the FBI with Comey. So one of the things is, using data, evidence, or video when it suits your cause, but ignoring it when it exposes your cause. So that's a perfect example of hypocrisy. I mean, when the FBI director came out with the re-engagement of the email thing, the Trump's surrogate, I think was it Kellyanne Conway, started saying, he's great, he knows what he's doing, and then when he rescinded, she's like, oh well, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or it's no good. Again, you have to kind of take that. To me, that's hypocrisy. Another really big example of hypocrisy, and this is where I see it a lot on CNN or watching some of the pundits go back and forth. And I find this to be the most frustrating one, where when someone presents you with evidence about a person X, you deflect to person Y. So it's like, if we were to say, well, why did Hillary have a private servant? Oh, well, so did George W. Bush, so did Colin Powell, so did Condoleezza Rice. That's true. But it doesn't address the problem. Or when you say, well, Trump has all these accused women. Well, yeah, Bill Clinton had those women. Again, that's deflecting. That's not really addressing the question, and that happens a lot. And that, to me, is one of the more frustrating ones that happens in terms of hypocrisy. And then there's some more really outrageous, egregious. And again, if you have examples, post them below. Comment. I'm curious what you think about different examples of hypocrisy, because it's important for us to understand what they are, particularly in terms of political discussions. One of the big ones I find is saying when someone says to do something and then denies completely saying it. That's a prime example of what Trump might say. He'll say something and then say, I never said that. Well, that to me is absolute hypocrisy. Another slightly less bad hypocritical activity is answering a question by not answering a question. So I mean, that's like a standard political thing. I mean, that happens in Parliament in Canada. It happens everywhere. Like, there's politicians all their lives will deflect or spin and not answer the question. And so, to me, like, I certainly respond more to those types of people who do answer questions in the right way. And then another example of hypocrisy is saying we should do X, Y, or Z, but then doing the exact opposite. And again, if you like what you're hearing, comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Like, post, share. I appreciate all the discussion. I'm doing this because I care about politics. I care about reasonable discourse. My recent post on Facebook is about the same thing. It's like, we need to engage each other in positive ways and productive ways, and not resort to taking the discourse to some sort of negative level. We saw part of that during the Canadian election. Now we're seeing it in the American election. It's a bad thing. We want to make sure that we be open, and if we screw up or we say something wrong, or we have logical fallacies, or if we are hypocritical, we need to acknowledge that so we can get better. Another great example in the U.S. is often politicians say, particularly in the Supreme Court justice situation, they say we should listen to the Constitution, but then they don't listen to the Constitution. So like, that to me is another example of hypocrisy. The biggest one that really bugs me is the one about the women. So we should listen to women, right, when they call out issues of sexual assault and sexism, but then we listen to some women but not the other women. So like, the perfect example of the Trump thing, he's talking about all the women that are against Bill Clinton, but then he won't talk about the women who are against him. He says, no, we shouldn't listen to them, they're lying. So hypocrisy means you have to be able to listen to both, and we should support both of them and explore those as best as possible. And the big challenge with this is that if you're blind to what's happening, then you're going to it's going to hurt your brand. It's going to impact people in negative ways. So that's why it's so important to be able to acknowledge and address that. So what I find, and the last thing I'll say finally, is that hypocrites are sadly blind to hypocrisy, so they don't actually see it. So I hope you enjoy this discussion. I hope you guys have fun with the election tomorrow. And I'd love to hear your comments or thoughts or any questions you have for future topics. And normally I do this Facebook post around 5 o'clock, but I didn't get a chance. And I hope you enjoyed this. All right. See you later and have fun. Bye.